start this match. David, I got a bone to pick with you.
Why me?
Why don't you tell me why I'm sitting at home and then I see that you're having a tournament for the tag team titles? I'm the tag team champion. Why didn't I know about that?
Jesse Jones, you had to forfeit the tag team championship when your partners had to leave WOW for a family emergency. And that's why we've got a tournament now.
You gotta be freaking kidding me. I'm the tag team champion. I can defend the belts by myself.
You know, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
And it is for the WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
For the World Heavyweight Championship.
The match and new NWA Heavyweight Champion.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, once again to another edition of the Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling with your host, Mr. Green, and this is the Reboot. Did that come out right? Reboot review number 2 for WOW and their new series of programs. Have you seen the first one? That's a question I need to put out there, because I still find some people are putting in their comments on various platforms, not necessarily here, that they cannot find WOW and they don't know where to look for it. They leave the same question: where can I see this? And of course, it's kind of left up to the other participants in the chat room, because WOW seemingly does not choose to answer, for whatever reasons. But as I said in the previous podcast, I'll repeat now that I do find stations that air the program from time to time. When I do, I tend to try to update that. You can find it on the WPN's Facebook. You can find it on the WPN's Instagram. And you can also find it on the WPN's YouTube channel on the comment section of this channel. So there are a couple of ways, and I think, what do I have? I had about 10. I think about 10 stations from East to West Coast. So, and I guess the Midwest, because I was at WCCO in Minneapolis. I think I found out about that one too. So there's a couple of them that have it out there. So if you are unsure, that might help you out a little bit. It's not a full list. I'm sure they have far more stations than that, or at least I assume they do. But that might give you a good start. Before I even go into the WOW thing, I did want to bring up something that was kind of remote to WOW. This is a long shot. I just had to kind of rope it around. I was being told about this interesting promo that took place on AEW, was the Elevation Dark. Now, I'll be honest, I do not watch Elevation Dark, because if I'm going to watch your wrestling program, I'm probably more likely to tend to look at it on TV rather than the YouTube thing. Not that the YouTube is bad, because I watch a bunch of wrestling on YouTube. It's just that AEW has enough product already. They have Dynamite, Rampage, Elevation Dark, and I'm certainly not going to wander off into the subsequent shows like Being the Elite and all these other things like that. It's just too much. So I just, made my decision on the televised versions of it. But they had a promo that was done by one Marina Shafir, which has apparently made the rounds with a lot of people, that this is maybe one of the worst promos that they've heard. I mean, I have heard The Ultimate Warrior, and I've heard people say, well, he was nonsensical and stuff like that. And yeah, he had his moments. Now, and I'm not saying that he was a good person, because he said some horrible things following, in his personal life. But we're talking about the wrestler, the Ultimate Warrior. Even he had promos as nonsensical as they sound. At least they fit who he was. You know, the stars, and especially at that time when he was supposed to be like some entity rather than a person. But I bring all of that up, and I guess I'll find a position to slot her interview in here. So for those who haven't heard it, will be able to hear it. But it is just all over the page. Just I have no idea what she was trying to get out of her mouth. Just, you know me, you don't know me. It just was, just awful. And I think I'm going to try to slot in the magic of editing so we can all know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to play a little bit of that here, and then I'll come back and I'll get to the point. So let's slot in Marina Shafir, the problem, Marina Shafir, and let's see how she gets her words out of her mouth.
Marina Shafir gonna speak here. The problem. She is a problem.
Albany.
That's where we are.
My name is Marina Shafir, daughter of Disabella Shafir and Benjamin Shafir, and you welcomed us with open arms in '93 when we immigrated here from Moldova.
Oh, it's story time.
You know me. Yes, you do. My parents created the problem. In Albany, you raised the problem. You are a part of the problem.
Everybody's blaming Albany tonight.
It's not the best.
All of you are part of the problem.
Let them have it, Marina.
No, these are ticket-buying fans. Why are we trying to chase them?
You know me.
Part of the problem. You're part of the problem, Ian.
You don't know me. You don't know me. You don't know me. You don't know nothing about me.
Losing her mind here.
And look at Vicky. She loves this descent into madness. The madness in the eyes of Marina.
Understand this. Understand this. When the violins play, violence is always on the way.
All right. Wow. It doesn't get much easier to listen to, regardless of how many times you heard it. But you see what I mean. If you're just listening to that for the first time, you can see what I'm talking about. She just was all over the page. I mean, never mind the fact that she was kicking the bottom rope and pointing to people at the crowd and pointing at the camera. It was just so nonsensical. Now, why do I bring that up in the middle of a WoW review? I bring that up in the middle of a WoW review as a cautionary tale. That's why I bring it up, because I've said this about a couple of people who've gotten into the wrestling business. Some people who were, had all the potential in the world, and I still feel like Shafir has potential in front of her. The problem is that and I don't mean her as the problem, but the problem is that whatever powers that be, they are pushing her out there too fast. We all know that she would not be on AEW television right now if she were not A, a certified MMA star, and B, hooked up with the Ronda Rousey and the MMA 4 Horsewomen. If those things were not there, it's very likely she would have worked her way up like a lot of other people. But because she is in the position that she is, she got slotted to number 1 and 1A as far as the biggest wrestling promotions in the world, whereas she probably should be working on a independent level. And that, I don't mean that as a knock or something bad, but they say it all the time to trainers. This is the time that you test your stuff out. This is where if you're going to mess up, do it here. Get some of that stuff out your system now. While you're in front of a small crowd, why it's not making the rounds on TV, why it's not in front of millions of people, or whatever the case may be. Now, in her case, it probably wasn't 1 million or so yet. I think it's a couple of 100,000, but you get the point. It's a lot of people that saw it. So that is a very cautionary tale of pushing people through too soon that are not prepared for that position. WoW has a somewhat similar train of thought as far as talent is concerned. Yes, there are a lot of talented ladies on that roster. And there are a lot of them who have gone through the independents, but there are some who don't. And not just don't have any intentions of going through it. And then they get put on TV into this national stage and they have to, perform at essentially a high level. Now, the thing that they got going for them right now is that it is a taped show and edited, so most of the mistakes he can kind of bump out. But it ain't going to be that way forever. That's why this is a cautionary tale. If Jeannie Buss gets what she wants, which is, and she said this publicly, she wants to have WoW be some sort of touring entity. Much like AEW, well, AEW doesn't really do house shows, so let me rephrase that. Much like WWE goes from one place to another, and some of these other, regional wrestling promotions, how they tour in one spot to the next. Ring of Honor used to do it. I'm not sure if Impact really does it all that much anymore, but the NWA does some. They go from one location to the next, showing people what they got. WoW isn't there yet. WoW only does one thing as far as wrestling is concerned. That's produce TV for wrestling. They don't really do a lot of live events unless the cameras are there. Well, any. I'm not going to say a lot. They don't do any live events. They don't do pay-per-view, and they don't do house shows. So that takes away some of that. And they don't do live TV, so there's no net to catch them. There's a lot of that. There's a net, there's an airbag. They have a lot of fail-safe at this stage, but if they go further, Marina Shafir is what you're looking at. It's going to be a case where somebody's going to get put in front of a microphone a little too fast, and it's just going to be rambling and all over the page. No one in WoW has sounded quite that bad. Steffi Slays had a masterpiece promo by comparison to what Shafir just did, but it wasn't great, and that's what I mean. You want to be able to get some of these people out there and let them get used to dealing with people who paid for a wrestling show rather than I want to come in and watch a TV show be taped, and that's a different crowd, that's a different audience, and if they're not prepared to deal with it, and I know some of those girls in that roster know exactly what I'm talking about, because the crowd in one area is different than the next, and if they don't get used to that, they being the ones who only have WoW superhero experience, they're going to get eaten alive by some of those fans who just decide that they want to be cynical. They're not going to be able to handle it. So I just put that out there as a cautionary tale, and also just as an excuse to run that horrible promo. Ugh, terrible. So let's get off into the show recap. But please, if I would hope that is taking the heart somewhere down the line with somebody in WoW. Who knows? So this is the second of their new shows, and we start off with a show recap. Pretty much what they used to do last season. Nothing wrong with that. Last episode recap setting up the feud between the Beast and Rena Del Rey. I think that's how I pronounce it. Rena Del Rey, formerly known as Venomous. They had a confrontation in the unaired season of WoW, and it really didn't get the chance to go as far as it probably should have or could have. So this looks like this is the pickup from that, although it's a pickup with kind of a reboot. I mean, they address it like there was a feud between the two, but they never really got to the point where it was an ongoing thing. They had just kind of a match following like 2 matches with Venomous, and she was Venomous at the time. And then, there was not really a huge conclusion to that. Nothing wrong with this whole thing, but it just, much like the last time, it felt a little rushed. I think I would like to see them both smashing through some people and cutting some promos on each other or something. It just feels like it's like out of the blue. Not bad, but just kind of out of the blue. They also recapped on the beginnings of the tag team tournament and the fact that the Tonga Twins won the tournament over Chanchilla Chella and Randy Rara 2.0. So we move into the next segment. And before we get to that, here's the first flaw of the show. Twice before this match took place, Mesmera of the Heavy Metal Sisters, formerly known as the Psycho Sisters, was announced as a partner in this match. Announced as a partner. They said Mesmera and Fury of the Heavy Metal Sisters with Razor in their corner. That was what was put out. And again, 2 times that came out of somebody's mouth, and it never happened. This is like the 3rd time that Mesmera has been advertised to do something on that show that just didn't take place. I am completely convinced now that her in-ring work is probably very underdeveloped. And that's probably a nice way that I could put it. There's no way that they would do this over the course of 2 seasons and 3 years. And I guess it's been about that long by now. There's no way that you could do that to somebody over 2 seasons and 3 years. That, well, you know what? I guess if you include the lost one, we'll say 4. So, but no way that you could do that and still be cutting this person out if they were that good in the ring, or if they were at least competent in the ring. This cannot be. So, despite the fact what we've heard the announcers say, the Heavy Metal Sisters in this match are being represented by Razor and Fury, the 2 workers of the team. Mesmera's outside with a little bit of a different look. Looks more like a manager, and they acknowledge her as a manager. And before the show started, we got spoiler alerts when they was online in their Instagram, like, who do you think would be the best manager? And wow, there was an award for it, and they included Mesmera in the running. So they completely spoiled that, if that was one of the things. But it's the Heavy Metal Sisters against Miami Sweet Heat. For those of you that might have followed them on the independent circuit, that was the Go Hard Twins. This is part of the tournament. This was basically a showcase for the Twins, if nothing else. I mean, yeah, the Heavy Metal Sisters took over at some point in the match, but this is largely just a showcase for Miami Sweet Heat. And I don't want to say it wasn't a squash, but they being the Heavy Metal Sisters felt a little faceless in this match. Like, all of the unaired episodes, they were part of this super long, almost never-ending feud with the Daughters of the Darkness, or the Daughters of the Dark Side, or whatever they were called. And by default, they were kind of slotted as one of the top teams in the company, in the promotion, just because they were locked in this feud. Now, it didn't take them anywhere, but they had something important that they were dealing with throughout the course of that. And they probably will have something else important to do at some point, but here is just, it was a cold match. Despite the fact that it's part of the tag team tournament, it was a cold match. They got bumped out in the first round, and that was pretty much it. And it was almost as if you couldn't tell who was who. You couldn't. not tell you couldn't tell who's the babyface or the heel. I mean, because the Miami Sweet Heat jumped them right at the bell, but then you got the Heavy Metal Sisters that thumbed somebody in the eye. I mean, they both did some level of heel tactic in the match, even if it didn't keep up for the entirety of it. So I had no idea. It was in a vacuum. The match was fine to watch, and yes, the Heat wins. They advance. They go to the second round if there are rounds, because WoW is never going to show any brackets for this. I'm pretty sure they never do it the last 3 times they did a tag team tournament, so I don't expect them to do it now. So they can flip and flop people around if they choose to without any question. But the Heat wins, and there are audible boos that come off on TV. Yeah, you can see some people cheering back there, but it's like, I don't know if the crowd knew who to cheer or boo for there. It just seemed like it was just a match, which just seems like it was a common theme here. It was just a match. It was just a match out of nowhere, a match out of the blue. It was cold, and it didn't have anything underneath it. You didn't get introduced to the Heavy Metal Sisters, for those who might not have any idea who they are. You didn't really get introduced to Miami Sweet Heat. So it was just, here's this tag match. Watch it. And that was pretty much it. It just was there. And I can't really knock it, but I can't praise it either, other than, I will say that the Sweet Heat, the MSH or something. We need to do something with that name. But that team with the Twins, they did a lot to try to showcase them as a tag team unit. Now, I want to give credit for that, because they probably utilized a little bit more tag team centric maneuvers than the Heavy Metal Sisters did. But I got the feeling that the sisters' job at that point was just to make sure that Miami Sweet Heat looked good, and they pretty much did. And moving on. And I didn't see anything that Mesmer gave in as a manager other than playing the drums on somebody's head. And why is she walking out there with drumsticks? Now that I think about it, that didn't make any. Yeah, well, anyway, I guess now that they switched the name over to the Heavy Metal Sisters, it does make sense. So, moving on. Next segment that they had was Foxy Fierce in a profile video, done with a kind of 70s vibe, showing her skating around Venice Beach or in the park or wherever, and showing her yoga moves and roller skating moves and all that good stuff, a beautiful smile and all that stuff. Great profile video, as they all are, and I fully expected her to walk into this match and lose because of it. My mind has not changed with the instituting of the videos. More often than not, when there's a video that's preceding whoever it is that's talking, they go out there and lose, with the exception of one person, apparently a show. So my guess was Foxy Fierce was going to eat the pin regardless of who she was in there with. So this goes off into the next segment where we had the match, and this was going to be another cold match. It was going to be, but this segment got saved. Jesse Jones interrupts and comes in and complains about not being the tag team champion. I loved this. I absolutely loved this. This might have been the highlight of the show for me. And matter of fact, I'm going to say it is. This was the top segment. I ain't even through this review. And I'm just going to tell you now, this was the top segment of the show for me. Why was it the top segment? Because they actually acknowledged something that took place the previous season and didn't ignore it. I gave that review last time that their continuity was terrible, and I hated the fact that they would just do things and move on and ignore it like it didn't take place or it didn't exist or whatever the case may be. Here, they did not do that. Jesse Jones comes out. She demands a microphone, gets it from David McClain, gets into the ring and tells her, why am I not the champion? And more so than that, it was grounded in reality. David, I was sitting at home and I see that a new tag team tournament was announced and I wasn't even told about it. That sounds like something that could and would happen. And now, whereas I don't agree with the concept that, well, you know, your partners left, so we couldn't do it. Whereas I don't agree with that, it still makes sense. You know, he's the boss. And let's take it from the David McClain point of view. He might have felt like, well, you know, rather than try to fix this whole thing and get another partner, we'll just start a brand new tournament. You know, I'm doing the whole thing from scratch. Might as well start that from scratch too, in a kayfabe universe. So he basically says that the reason that you're not the champion now is because your partners are no longer here. Now, if you haven't listened to the previous reviews or you have not seen those episodes, Jesse Jones partnered up with they called on the show the Dixie Darlings. I hate that name. So they defeated Fire and Adrenaline, the then reigning champions, by doing the old twin switcheroo. And it kind of immediately slotted them into like this Freebird thing where any two of the three could defend. They had won the tag team championships, and Fire and Adrenaline were going to get a rematch, but you know that didn't happen because they both moved on. And the Darlings apparently have moved on as well. On TV in the WoW universe, David says, you know, because your partners had a family emergency and they had to leave. WoW, perfectly fine. Perfectly fine, and I'm willing to, you know, accept that. I'm also willing to accept that Jesse Jones would be upset about it. This segment was great. In the sea of this hour, this segment was great. She is still a top heel. She knows how to talk on the microphone. She knows how to work. It is almost nothing that I could say wrong about Jesse Jones. I've never had a crossword with her. I'm hard pressed to find anything that I can pull out to say that's an error here. The only thing that I would have added to this, and this is not, you know, a necessity, but I'm just saying, creatively speaking, the only thing I would have added to this is she somewhere down the line, didn't have to be this episode because it wouldn't have made sense to do it here, but somewhere down the line, if she shows up with the old belts, that would be great. Because I think they're on their third incarnation of the belts now. I know they had the Cage Heat original belts, and then they got another pair with the purple straps, and I think they just redone some championship belts with the new WoW neon logo. So I think that would be cool if she showed up by herself with these two belts, just, you know, claiming that she is the one true tag team champions, which sounds weird just coming out of my mouth, but I love it. So she says that she wants the belts. She wants to be the tag team champion. She deserves to be in there. She doesn't need a partner. That's ultimately where this promo is leading towards, is that I don't need a partner. You shouldn't be taking this off me because I'm good enough basically to be my own team. And before he gets another word in, he said, and I'll prove it. So what was supposed to be Foxy Fierce versus Ice Cold 2.0, because yes, there was another Ice Cold way back in the day, about 20 years ago. So they just decided to recycle the name, her and Randy Rah-Rah. So before that match takes place, Jesse says, hey, you two are tagging up. And that both of them agree to do it. Now, on the surface of that, I guess that seems fine because, you know, you got 2-on-1. Why wouldn't you agree to do it? And David is allowing it. He's at ringside, so he's not disputing it. So, hey, it works. The ref is down for it. Jesse Bell demands it. The participants are down for it. The matchmaker's right there at ringside. All of this, you know, pretty much in my universe works. Yeah, you could probably, you know, poke some holes in it if you really wanted to, but for these purposes, perfectly fine. Jessie starts out with Foxy Fierce. They do a couple exchanges. You know, they clearly wanted to make Foxy look like she was competent in the ring because she was dancing with, I should say dancing with her, but she would, do a move and then she'd probably do a little bit of a dance in the corner and whatnot. But when the tag is made, Jessie Jones takes over. And she's just, ice cold is, she's a ridiculously small young lady. I'm sorry. There's no way that Jessie Jones could not bully her around. This is where she starts to look like a star. Jessie is in control of a handicap match. Not only is she in control, and not only does she win said handicap match, but she taps Ice Cold out. Not 10 seconds later, Foxy Fierce comes into the ring. She gets the armbar applied to her, and she taps out too. Not as big on screen, but she taps out. So you got the heel, the clear heel, and that's one thing that you cannot overlook. You got the clear heel, Jessie Jones. Ain't no mistaking whether she's, babyface or heel in this. Come into the ring, demand what she wants, call her spot, and tap out two people at once. Both of them who are debuting that day, or this episode, mind you. So, nice knowing you, Foxy Fierce, and nice knowing you, Ice Cold 2.0. Because if that's your introduction, I don't really feel all that confident. It's probably going to be off into the shuffle land for you now. You can continue to dance in the corners, but I don't know how the win and losses are going to be. So we have that, and now an arrangement is made of sorts when David McClain gets on the microphone, and Jessie pretty much is telling him, you see what I just did there. Now, that's not verbatim, but you get the point. And McClain is saying, hey, look, it's a tag team tournament. You have to have a partner in order for you to be in it. So what I get from that is that, A, I guess there's still open slots in the tag team tournament. They're filling it in as they go. So I'll just accept that. And B, that he's willing to have her in the thing so long as she finds a partner. Now, this is where I wish I remembered the line exactly, but I love the line how she gave it. But it's a follow-up to what McClain was saying. It takes two of you to be in the tournament. And her response is basically, it takes two to be in the tournament, but it only takes one to win. I'll find a prop and I'll stick them up on the corner and you watch me do my thing. That's more or less. Great stuff. Again, I can't think anything that's wrong or off the rails there. Other than that, Jessie Jones owes me a shirt from Designer. Now that I think about it, from Designer one a couple of years ago. Come on, Jessie, send me that shirt. I'll take extra large. We leave out of that. They announced the return of the Bully Busters, so they're back together. We saw them, I think, once last season before Keita Rush got hurt and she was shipped out for the remainder of the show. So now we got Steffi Slays and Keita Rush, maybe the remaining not original. Maybe the longest running tag team in the WoW at this point, possibly. Even though they've been on and off, but they're still there. Even though it seems like there's been no real direction for the Bully Busters. Anyway, that's not the point. That's getting off into something else. Next segment is another video package. I don't want to butcher that. Leah Makoa. So, and if I said that incorrectly, I apologize to that young lady. So they do this video package, and the same rules apply. The video packages look great, and sometimes they're more impactful than others. They do a good job of relating the information of what they need you to know about their personal background, about how they got into wrestling, or how they survived as a youth or this, that, and the other, because, some of them have some issues and whatnot, and this is where they get to relate that. And that's fine. I just wish that those things came with a win more often than not. So you have that. And I'm thinking, they put a lot into telling us about her family and letting us know what her mother felt about her getting into wrestling, and that she went from not wanting to do it to being a bigger supporter. I mean, it's well done material, and it makes it hard for you not to root for her when you're looking at this from a televised standpoint. Now, if I'm in a crowd and I don't see that, I probably would not know who I'm rooting for unless they were going to make it very clear. In this case, they did make it clear, and I have to give credit where credit is due. So we got McCoy versus Glitch the Gamer, who I think on the indies is Vert Vixen. I believe that's her. And it fits who she is on the indies as well as it does WoW. Nothing's really changed there other than the name and the color scheme. This was a good match. No real definitive good guy, bad guy here. In fact, I would probably say this may be the best match in the course of the show. Not the best segment, but the best match. And as such, honestly, I think that the multiple camera cuts work against them. The camera cuts do good when you're dealing with people who are inexperienced and you have to cut on the action. Now, some people don't know what I mean when I say that, and I know I talked about that before. Some of you editors out there probably know exactly what I mean, but it is the action of when the editor takes, say, camera one, and we're looking at Steffi Slade's punch Razor in the head, but the punch may not come all the way through. It might leave maybe an inch of space or an inch of daylight between them. So rather than to show that thing all the way through, the minute it gets relatively close and like a second before she pulls away or Razor drops, you cut to the next camera quickly so you don't see the impact. You just get the implied impact. But when that's done so much, that was just an example, but when that's done so much, sometimes it works against you. When the match looks good, and this seemingly looked pretty good, it worked against the match a little bit for me to constantly go from this camera to that camera to upstairs to the ringside to floating camera. It just let this flow a little bit. Let me get the feel of the matches going on. Let me see them do what they're doing rather than all these different angles. And sometimes they're on angles that they just shouldn't be on. There was a chin lock applied, and I don't want to see their lips moving, talking to each other. But the camera's right there in their face, and it's hard for you not to see it. So, this is, again, one of those points where, A, you have a camera that's set that can kind of hold the scene for a while, and B, it'd probably be good to have a establishing shot camera or hard cam that's in the crowd or up on a riser or something that can look directly into that ring and see them without being too close to see everything. So this was a fun match, interesting. I didn't think anything was bad with it. And McCoy wins with STO. And seemingly in that audience has pretty strong fan support. So maybe she might be one of their top baby faces going forward. I mean, again, I'm not there, so I don't know if they actually run those segments in the crowd for them to see. But I can certainly see if that ran in the room, how they could pick up, going for, rooting for her. And then again, you might have some people that, I don't know how far LA is from the Bay, but I know that depending on where you stand, she might have a strong Tongan contingent that's out in the audience that's rooting for her. So wrestling still is regional, much like the rest of the world and the rest of entertainment. So she might have had a strong support system out there just in general. This sets up for the main event. or coming out of this, it sets up for the main event, which is Princess Aussie versus Rina Del Rey. Now, before they get to that, the next segment is the Princess Aussie segment, and this seems to be there to try and reestablish who Aussie is to the viewing audience. They have a sit-down interview. They got, footage of her standing out with her bamboo sticks. Well, I think they are bamboos. I might be wrong. Which were addressed in the previous seasons. They talk about the sticks being destroyed as they represented family and everything. That basically this whole story about the power is within you, not within these sticks. Is nice enough, and it, I guess, explains her background, but as much as I gave praise to Jesse Jones and them following up with the tag team issue, I have to go back and say they have not given any explanation whatsoever on Princess Aussie being controlled or how she got free. They're talking about her sticks being burned by Siren, the voodoo doll, or Nina Monet, depending on where you're watching or where you're listening to this from. They talked about that portion of it, but they skipped over all the entire season of her being some mind-controlled drone, part of the group fighting with the Heavy Metal Sisters, or Psycho Sisters then. They didn't talk about any of that. It just skipped past. Now, maybe they'll address it somewhere down the line. Maybe it'll come up. I don't know. I hope that it does, but it would make sense to me that the first time we see her and she's walking around and she's perfectly fine all of a sudden. Well, maybe not all of a sudden. It's been 2.5 years. But on TV, it seems like all of a sudden. And she's not have these bags under her eyes, and she's not being walked around by Siren or Holiday. The explanation would have been nice. It would have been nice to hear them say, hey, well, she escaped or somebody came and got her, or I don't know, anything. But just to stick her back on TV again, this is one of those points where it's like, all right, just ignore it, it'll go away. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how it comes off. So we got no explanation of that, and we just move on. This is why I love that Jesse Jones segment so much. Thank God that segment was there and that they followed up. This match, standard, nice main event, but it's cold. There's nothing behind this. There was nothing behind the Makoa and Glitch the Gamer match either, or the Heavy Metal Sisters, other than as a tag team tournament thing. There was nothing to put any heat into this situation, and I, much like the previous match, really was not all that concerned about who won or lost it. It was just a match. It was. And that's what I mean when I say it's cold. There was nothing there to get me excited about it or make me want to watch it further or be invested in it. It was just, here's Princess Aussie, and we're giving her this big hero's return and this big build-up, and let's stick her in there with the person that we know is going to be in the main event. So you have that, and it's not like she's debuting, but she got the debut treatment because she put up the good fights, as they like to say, or if I could quote Tribe Called Quest, I'd give it an evil effort and teeth a nice try. But it didn't go anywhere because she lost. So despite the fact that we got this big, long, overdrawn segment about the bamboo sticks and the mother sending a word and Dave McClain talking in the voiceover, I wish she knew that the strength was in her, or some other corniness like that, it all ended with a big power slam and a loss delivered by Del Rey, which apparently she has gone through somewhat of a gimmick change. Now, I don't know if they just didn't want to deal with calling somebody venomous on television. May not sound good, in all cases. But I have no issue with the change of gimmick here because it probably was like 2 teaspoons away from what Venomous was to begin with. So it's not like she just came out there acting like a whole different person. If I was going to say anything, it's like she's still Venomous and everything but the name. They still, show the video with her in the lowrider. They still, pretty much address her as being, I don't want to say from the hood or whatnot, but she from the LBC, just stuff like that. It all fits who she was before, so there's no reason to gripe and complain about her rebirth as Reina Del Rey. It's not as drastic a change as like Akeem from the one man game to the Akeem the African Dream, and I know that goes over some people because you're not that old to remember that. The match flows well, and again I have to say, the better the participants in the match, it feels like the camera cuts work against them. It would be better just to see them, in longer spans where they can do what they do with each other without all the cuts. And with these two, I thought that they probably didn't even need a camera cut. I mean, yeah, that doesn't make for great television, but it doesn't need to be a camera cut every 5-6 seconds. It just doesn't. And it's distracting. I understand that when you have some people who need to be covered up, but those two know what they're doing. And again, I cannot phrase it any better. Those cuts seem to work against them. So anyway, I've already told you how this ends. Del Rey hits the power slam for the win, polishes off Princess Aussie. Not easily, but not super easy, I should say, but with some ease coming there towards the end. And as he is celebrating or getting up onto the corner to do or say something, from behind, as a receipt from last week, comes the Beast, who spears her right there on the mat, drops it, boom, and we're off the air. Now, I forgot to say earlier that there was a promo for Chainsaw versus G.I. Jane next week, so I guess stay tuned for that. But it sounds like another cold match, much like this was. The only thing that really saved this was the end. The Beast saved this segment. Her coming in and nailing Del Rey. I mean, the segment wasn't bad. It's just very neutral. Like, there was really no reason to root for either one of them. This is one of those points where the pre-match promo helps. It's kind of a lost art. But if you're going to have a match that's just absolutely cold and a video package that has nothing to do with the match, because as nice as the video package was, it didn't have anything to do with the match other than a quick way to reestablish that she's now a babyface. If those things are not going to happen, then one of them at least needs to have a microphone in their hand and berate the audience, or go out there and do something to establish a will or desire to cheer or boo for this individual. I did not get that feeling from this match whatsoever, because even though Princess Aussie was a clear babyface, Del Rey didn't do anything wrong. She didn't do anything for me to be mad about. Yeah, she jumped the Beast from behind last week, but that was last week, and that ain't got nothing to do with Aussie. And she hasn't cut a promo to make it anything to do with her. So the receipts at the end of this gave it a little something, but it's at the end of the show, and too little, too late. I don't know what it is that they're leaning on this Love and Thunder font that they have on the show, though. That just if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look at the credits. Or look at the lower thirds when the ladies out there, and then go look up Thor, Love, and Thunder. You'll see what I mean. Far too close for that to be a coincidence. Far too close. They're leaning into that a bit too much. The show overall was, if I had to give it a grade, I'd say it was maybe a strong C, a C plus. I mean, Jesse Jones' segment is a great segment, but I don't know if it's enough to uplift 3 other segments of the show. Nothing was bad here. Nothing was bad. It just was another show right now. Now, I know they're at this reboot phase, and this is episode 2, so it's starting to establish and lay groundwork and reestablish feuds and who you should cheer for and who you should boo for. So I know that those things are coming. Though that's on the way without question. But right now, on this episode, it was very difficult to feel one way or the other about most of them. Like I said with the tag team matches, both of those teams cheated to some degree, and neither one of them cheated heavy. You just had the Miami Sweet Heat kick Razor like right before the bell, which was a cheap shot. But then you had the Heavy Metal Sisters rake an eye or put a thumb in her eye and then choke her out on the ropes slightly. I mean, Mesmer playing drums on the head isn't really going to cost him a loss, maybe frustrating. But that's what I mean. It just... Those matches, although done well and good to watch, and I don't want it to come off like the matches were terrible. It was just a very cold thing, and it was hard to feel for. It's a problem that faces a lot of independent promotions, day by day. If I could borrow a line from the former gatekeeper, Kelly Klein. She used the phrase that the independents are very disjointed because you can't really take one angle from one place to the next oftentimes. And that's true. But in a while, it's not that you can't take the angle from one place to the next. These angles haven't started, and they're just getting going. And, yes, the tournament's happening, but the tournament isn't enough to give you a real heat spot here or a real feeling of, ooh, I want this person to win. Because we're just getting introduced, well, I said person or persons to win, because we're just getting introduced to half of this roster. It's just, cold matches are difficult. And I feel for anybody that has to go out there and perform one. But some of that needs to fall on the production. They should either do something specifically to get, to point one way or the other, or allow the talent to do something that's going to make that point. Thank goodness, again, for that Jesse Jones knows how to be a heel. She knows how to do it, and she's good at it. So, that was, wow, episode 2. I hope this builds up and comes along. Like I said, nothing's wrong with this episode, but it was nothing outstanding either. It's probably a strong C plus. That's about as good as I could muster it for what I would think about this. Just for the sake of the emotion that I should or want to feel when I watch this program. Right now, I didn't get that through most of it. It spiked up in the middle of the handi-cap match. Or not in the middle of it. It spiked up right before it during the promo. And then it kind of came back down once it moved out of that match. It just wasn't enough to keep me going. So there we go. That is the review for episode 2. Be sure to check your local listings so you can see where you can find WOW in your area. Or, you can go to my channel, Instagram, Facebook, and the Women's Pro Wrestling Network, and you can look for that little list that was placed up so that maybe you can find yours in your area. If you have one and I didn't list it, leave it in the comments so I can add it too and just keep it going as a community thing. Be sure to check out. We got some new matches that have been posted up. Yeah, I believe that. New matches going up right here on WPN. So you got another outlet to see some women's wrestling if you choose to do that. Also want to give a shout out to Stardom. I'll say that, you want to watch something else and get a different flavor for women's wrestling across the country and the globe. Try that as well. Also, I looked at a little bit of it before doing this this podcast to just get the flavor for something else, not because I'm saying one's better than the other, but when you see the production quality from one place, especially across the world, and you see the production quality for WoW, it does put in line or help you get an idea of what's the word I'm looking for, not the priorities, but the production value, where they want to go and what they want to relate. I get a lot of feeling that WoW is looking to relate story and storylines and character more so than maybe just a match. But the season is young, and we will see if that is correct and see if I'm right. If I am, I suspect that the matches will feel a bit stronger once there's an emotional tie to it and as the show goes further. But we'll know that hopefully by episode 3 or 4 when this thing picks up the pace, and maybe we'll have some established baby faces and heels, and we'll know who to cheer and boo for. So with that said, again, thank you for tuning in to the Rights and Wrongs, a pro wrestling podcast. I will endeavor to do this again because I enjoyed the reviews and I enjoy you guys checking out the channel. Be sure to subscribe if you have not done that already. This podcast is available on greater podcast platforms across the scene. And if you can't find it there, you can always go to WPNWrestling.com. Not only do we have all the podcasts available on the front page for your download or streaming to listen to, you can always catch our 24-hour stream, 24 hours, 7 days a week, right there on that website. The show is always on. Always matches dating back to 2013 with some people that you will know and recognize from, I guess, their star positions today, like Akira Hogan, who you might see as one of the baddies, or Harlow O'Hara, who you might know as Fury now, or Nina Monet, who you might know as Siren, Jordan Grace, who you'll see on Impact. You got a bunch of these just scattered throughout a bunch of different matches, just all available for your consumption, and new matches always being added to the database and the archives every chance we get. Like these next two tag team matches, and one singles match coming up. All you gotta do is go up there, subscribe, like the channel and the videos to keep us in the rankings. Speaking of liking it, please like this wherever you may be listening to it. And that will do it. I think that's enough shilling for me today. Any comments, leave them below so I can address, and I will bring up on the next show. And I think that is it. So, folks, I'm going to call this one a night. This is Mr. Green saying that this is Mr. Green saying so long. And we'll see you on the next go-round. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments, please contact us via our Facebook or our YouTube channel at the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. If you're new to the WPN, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like our page. We appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening.